Hello, everybody out there in YouTube land. It's your T-shirted historian. Welcome to another week in Geek. All right. Well, it's been an interesting week. I had some cool stuff pop up on my doorstep a couple of days ago. And I've been meaning to get videos out for them. But I have just been so demotivated the last couple of days. It's just like I didn't feel like doing anything. And so I still got stuff in boxes, in packages, looking at me going, can you please play with me or read me? And I'm just kind of like, no, I don't wanna. So I've got videos to get out. And I do apologize if you guys were excited for them and those. But one of these packages, I assure you, is going to be really special. A really, really, really special unboxing. Because I'm going to have to do a little bit of a painting video to go along with it in order to demonstrate how it works. So that'll be fun. That's something to look forward to this week. And our summer is coming to a close pretty rapidly. I think I've got about, let's see if I look at our calendar here. We have 2 more Dungeons and Discussions before I have to close the season. So the official final Dungeons and Discussions episode for this season will happen on the 30th of this month. And then we'll put the show on ice until I get time off again to play or to run it in the mornings. It's just kind of the way life goes. I'm sorry. I know a lot of you guys look forward to those dungeon discussions in the mornings, and honestly, I get a really good audience for those Tuesday mornings. I don't know if it's the time that appeals to most of our, viewers over in the UK and Australia, or if it's the subject matter, the hardcore subject matter of gaming. And believe me, if I could do this full time, I absolutely would. Nothing would make me happier than to be able to do YouTube full time. But sadly, that's not an option at this time. If we get our membership up a little bit more, maybe I can, I'm going to have to hit significantly higher numbers, though. And I only just got monetized, and which I'm very grateful for, but it sure took a long time to get here. So, why was I a little late today? Well, I was having a little heart-to-heart with somebody, and I won't say who. People in the back know. But it's kind of funny how we came to a lot of similar experiences on things. We both kind of grew up reading a lot of the same books. As a youngster, I read a little bit of Asimov. I read Harry Harrison. I read Fritz Leiber. Obviously, I read lots and lots of Howard. A little later on, I started off with some Lovecraft, and now I'm reading some Jack Vance. Somebody who a lot of people said, well, you should have started out with Jack Vance. Jack Vance was so good. I'm discovering that, And that's the kicker about things, man. When you're young, you have all the time in the world to read all these really good books, but you don't really have the understanding to appreciate them so much. And the same thing goes with D&D books too, I might add. And when you get older, you have a lot less time to enjoy and read these books, but you have a lot more understanding. So it kind of becomes a case of time management. What can I read? When can I read it? How much time do I have? And no man knows how much time he has, truly. So why not spend it doing something good? And as this person pointed out to me, movies and TV shows today are kind of crap. And they are. I complain about them enough on this show to inform you of how crap they are. And I've decided that I may spend a bit less time watching these newer things and just in catching up on my reading, because there's a lot of good books out there I still need to read. And I don't know how much time I have left, Going to be 51 next month. I figure I've at least got another 9 years minimum. Maybe maximum. I don't know. Kind of depends on health factors and things like that. But, I figure that's a fair estimate, at least another 9 years. That's not very much time to get a lot of reading in. And that's kind of what I'm going to devote myself to a bit more. Because Hollywood ain't getting any better. And until it does, there's really nothing out there that's worth it, is there? Case in point, I'm desperately trying to watch Army of the Dead right now. 2.5 hour, well, almost 3 hour show. I tried watching it way back when it first came out, and I literally fell asleep through, I don't know about what mark, maybe after the first 30 minutes or so. And by the time I woke up and saw where I was in the film, I'm like, oh, this film's still going, and it's still not interesting. So I turned it off, never looked back at it. Well, today I find out that Simon Publishing has actually released the long-awaited zombicide Army of the Dead. And they announced it years ago, back when that show first came out, that movie first came out. And we never saw hide nor hair or mention of it up until recently, a couple months ago. I found out, oh, they're planning on releasing it here in July. Sure enough, they did. So I've got that box on its way here. Should be here Thursday. Kind of excited to see what they've done with it. I like Simon products, and it's a very small dream of mine to someday get a sponsorship by Simon, just so I don't have to spend so much money on their stuff. Seriously. If Simon, if you guys are out there listening, and I know sometimes you do, be happy to promote your materials. Just, send me some. I'll be happy to paint them on stream or whatever. There we go. But yeah, that's the thing. People talk about the Dune Part 2 and how great it was, and then they go back and they look at it in retrospective and they say, maybe that film really wasn't all that great. The pacing wasn't all that good. And I'm like, yeah, I noticed that with a lot of films these days. And I've said it more than once. Most of my library that I've picked up over the last, 9-10 years has been old stuff from the 80s and the 90s. But mostly the 80s. Because it was good back then. Or at least it was enjoyable. At least they knew how to make a movie. They didn't necessarily require any more brains. I'm not going to say that Commando with Arnold Schwarzenegger is necessarily better written than some garbage that Zack Snyder puts out today, like Rebel Moon or whatever. But at least it was fun. It was enjoyable. It was dumb fun, but we knew what we were in for. And I don't know what makes it so fundamentally better. But it just worked. It was just better. It was more fun. I don't know. Get me. I don't have all the answers. I know what I like. But anyway, shall we get this party started? I've ranted for about 10 minutes now, and we have people to talk to. So let's get them on stage. First, starting off with Mr. Grimm, who is apparently not appearing on camera today.
No, it's too hot. I am just a puddle of sweat and goo.
Yeah, we don't want to see Gooey Grimm.
No.
And then we have Gooey Greg, who apparently doesn't have his ears on. Maybe he walked away. He didn't want to listen to the rant. And our special guest today, the Chubby Funster. Hey.
Hey, guys.
How are you doing, sir?
Doing good. I'm also Greg, so if I accidentally answer for him, that's the question.
That's fine.
There you go.
We're double Gregged.
How's the microphone today?
Sounds okay. All right. Well, let's see. I got some stuff coming out here. Let me see what we got in the audience. Brent Norton, good to see you. Thoth, good to see you. Green Dragon, great to see you. Mercurius, you sent me Australian $5. Wow, thank you, man, for the reading fund. Also, libraries are your friends. Yes, they are. Although I don't know if I can trust libraries anymore because, you know, all the problematic content that's gotten removed from the shelves. I wonder if you're going to be able to find all the good stuff. I mean, all it takes is one person to object to, I don't know, someone's portrayal of something in some science fiction book that you got, and all of a sudden those copies are being yanked off the public library shelves because, you know, people are sensitive.
That only runs in one direction, though. You can't complain about the complaint to cancel the complaint.
Isn't that funny?
Yeah. Greg,
But-
to Greg, I can have a sausage roll. Which is something only Brits will get, but never mind.
Let's see. For $5, let me see. What are we going to give you? What do we got? Oh, you want to do welcome?
Sure.
Sure. Let's do welcome.
Welcome.
Nobody has ever watched that show. Am I the only big Bronson fan on this panel?
I've watched a few, but it was mostly Arnold Schwarzenegger stuff by the time I came of age.
Oh, man.
Schwarzenegger and Stallone.
Well, I grew up watching them too, but I mean, Charles Bronson is the man. I mean, you know, if I had to put Schwarzenegger up against Bronson in a fist fight, I would have bet on Bronson all the way because he's a genuine tough guy.
He's got the skills.
Yeah, I mean, the dude was he was a coal miner. He was in World War II. You know, and like if you ever watched the movie Hard Times with Charles Bronson and James Coburn, they said that, yeah, he smoked like a chimney, but, you know, he could probably whoop any guy on that set. Because he was just a lean, hard little dude. But, yeah, man. Bronson's my guy. I still don't have all of his movies, but I'm working on it slowly. Well, let's talk about you. I didn't realize you had such a collection of books, man. When you sent me your pack to look at all the stuff, all your titles, I was like, "Oh,
the
who
past
wrote
year
this?"
has been really prolific. I started taking a ADD medication that gives me a lot more executive function than I've had for most of my life. So I can do things that before I would have fizzled out. I have a whole folder of all of the things that never made it to development because I couldn't get the willpower together to write it.
I need your medication, man.
Yeah, so it's been really useful. I never would have done it if my son and my brother hadn't both started using it and had really effective improvement in function. So I was like, oh, maybe. And then once I started taking it, it was pretty amazing. Yeah.
Well, that's cool, man. Because what brought me to you, because I didn't realize you had such a backlog of stuff, was I just happened to catch one of your posts on Twitter. You were saying, Ambition and Avarice on sale today on Drive-Thru RPG, and I was like, I didn't know he made games. So I punched the button, and checked out the Drive-Thru RPG. So Ambition and Avarice 2, and you happen to have a print copy, and I was like, oh damn, dude's got a print copy, and it's on sale. I'm sold, because I like to support the indies. And then when I actually got a copy of it, I was so flabbergasted. I mean, you saw my unboxing.
Yeah, I did.
And that was a genuine reaction to what I was seeing, because I had never read this book. I mean, yes, I had the PDF first, but I make a habit of not reading the PDFs before I get the printed book, because one, I want to have a genuine reaction, and two, I don't like PDFs, as everybody well knows.
I do all my gaming online now, so I mostly use the PDFs. I get proof copies of my stuff, and I usually end up giving it away to somebody in real life within 3 to 6 months, just because I don't use it as a reference personally. So I was just sitting there. I'm like, hey, we're talking about it. I'll just give it to somebody and it'll be gone. And then people were like, what book I'm like, I don't have it over here. I gave it to Gary or whatever. Like it's that's how it is. But yeah, that Ambition Everest 2 came out really well when the couple proofs that I've looked at and gave away. But you can use it as a improvised weapon to deal 1d4 damage. It's hefty.
We've got Aaron here.
Hey.
I love it when Aaron shows up. I think Aaron actually recommended your book too.
He did. I was very happy with his review. I released that book at a time when I was just coming back from stepping away from social media for a while. What we were talking about before we launched the show, I used to be really heavily involved in Google Plus when that was at its height for the role-playing game community.
Mhm.
And I had like 9,000 people that were in my circles and we were talking about stuff all the time, but it was so draining to do that because you have to always be dealing with responding to people's stuff. People get emotional and start arguing about stuff. And then I went through a divorce and I just said, like, I just can't do that. I can't do this anymore. So
Yeah,
I went way down in my social media presence.
See, that's why I don't open a Discord channel because everybody's like, T-shirt, you should open a Discord channel. I'm like, why? Then I have to monitor the damn
You have to
thing.
moderate it, yeah.
And not only that, but it's like I got like 50 different Discord channels on there, and half the time I'm muting all that shit anyway because I'm like, I don't really have time to read all this stuff. What am I going to do with my own?
Yeah, and then people will interpret a non-response as a response of some kind. Yeah, it's like, no, I just haven't even read what you're talking about. Like people will be like, and you're hiding from this, blah blah blah. I'm like, I just don't have time to interact with all this stuff all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And it's I think a lot of people don't appreciate how much their social media practices impact their personal mental health.
No kidding.
It really drags people down.
Yeah, I see a lot of people who step away from X for a while and come back to it, and I didn't realize how valuable that was until I had a lot of free time to be able to step away from X. And you realize, hey, the less I look at this thing, kind of the better my mental health gets overall. Although I do tend to miss some of the big controversies, so I'm constantly stepping back in and going, "Oh, what happened? What happened?" But
you just have to develop. I have a discipline of not getting into the stuff, so I post stuff on Twitter. I promised to myself when I started doing Twitter again, I was like, I'm not gonna get into these arguments with people, no matter how much I might feel passionate about it. Everything that I put out there is going to be something I want to be talking about positively as much as possible, like unless it's unavoidable. And that's really been good for me. I don't have to, if I see two very strong personalities going back and forth in everybody's posts, I'm not going to comment on that. It's just not worth it.
I kind of do that too, but every once in a while, I'll stick a foot in there if it's somebody I really like and want to champion them a little bit. But yeah, for the most part, I try not to stick my face in something that's between a couple of other people.
Yeah, so like I released Ambition Everest 2 back when I wasn't on Twitter. I was kind of just using Facebook for role-playing game group content, stuff like that. So I didn't get as wide of a distribution as I would if I had released it today. So I was really happy to get Aaron's review. I was happy that I was able to get it up to silver, I think it is right now. Stuff like that. But the Shadow Dark stuff that I've been doing recently and the Adventure Conquer King 2 stuff, they have a much larger built-in marketing already that you can tap into, and that is way more successful in getting eyes on than releasing your own product and carrying it 100% on your own weight.
Oh yeah. I don't want to make it sound like you're freeloading or anything, because that's not my intent. But you're really, standing on the shoulders of giants when you're talking about those two, because it's like they're what, both $1 million campaigns on Kickstarter, and
Acts 2 was like 300K, but I don't take my word for it. Like it was big. Yeah, it was very substantial.
Yeah, I mean, I've had Macrease on here twice, and my engagement when I have Macrease on is immense. Just because the guy is kind of a giant now on social media, and as far as the things that he says and the people that listen to him and get involved with his games, because Axe is a good game.
I love it. I play it every Saturday night.
That's cool. Play Ambition and Avarice too?
I did for over a year and a half. So, yeah. But one of the guys in my game group wrote an expansion to the campaign setting that I wrote for A&A 2, and he ran that for a while. I've run A&A, so I've run a lot of it. It's just can't do the same thing forever. That group has kind of rotating GM-ship that happens a lot, where we have a guy who runs Hell Divers as a thing, where based on the novels, where you dive down from like dirigibles over like a post-apocalypse world. I've run Alien modules. I love Alien. It's a fantastic RPG for brand new players, especially. Like the module design is top notch. It's incredible.
You're talking about the one with the stress dice and all that?
Yeah. I run it for work. We did a team building thing at work, and I ran it with people who'd never played role playing game before, and they immediately got totally into it and still talk about it 2 years later. So people really, they relate to it. It's a simple thing. You don't have to explain anything about the setting. People don't understand. If it gets in you, you're screwed. They immediately get. We had some guy who is a red herring in the Destroyer of Worlds module, where he has heartburn, and as soon as I described that he had heartburn, one of our women on our team who does quality assurance on stuff I do at work, she pulled out her flamer and lit him up. She didn't waste any time. She was like, "No way, heartburn or not, I don't care." She lit him up. So like people just relate to the material really well.
Yeah, most people have seen the movies. Kind of to address some chat here. Carrie Harrison says PDFs are the best. I admit I have to use them whenever I'm running games online, like I will be tomorrow. But yeah, I definitely much prefer hardbacks. Yes, I know they take up space on your shelf or in your house and all that, but they're just so much more fun to read and smell and just, touch and everything. It's just, you get so much more out of them, I think. PDF is, I hate to say it, but it's kind of like everything else that happens on a screen. It's kind of like you see it on screen, it's in your brain for a couple of minutes, and like 3 hours later, you've kind of forgotten what you saw on the screen. But,
yeah, reading a book is more kind of ritualistic. I think it helps you memorize the material. Plus, you can build a little fort out of books.
Yeah, plus you can make little drawings in the margins and stuff too.
It is better on the eyes, also, like Brent mentioned just a second ago.
Yeah, paper is very
looking at a screen all day, your eyes get exhausted.
Oh man, I did not start experiencing that until recently, and now I'm like, now I know what it's like. Even when you're doing something fun, you can get that eye strain. But I'm glad you enjoyed Alien. My experience with it is, the game was okay. I don't like the stress dice mechanic because it's so ridiculously over the top. It's just, and maybe it was the GM who was running it. So I've said this more than once. It doesn't matter what game you play. If your GM, depending on the way they run it, can really make you love or hate a system. And maybe that was my experience with it. But the GM was like throwing stress dice at me for everything. It was like, you see a dead body, get a stress dice. You feel a creepy bit of horror, get some get a stress dice. You're slightly uncomfortable here, get a stress dice. It's just kind of like, damn, dude, I'm just like accumulating all these stress dice for shit that, I shouldn't be getting those things for.
Yeah, I actually think a lot of the story game designs are set up to fix some problem that somebody had with a GM that they hated. So like a whole wave of the first wave of story games were all about taking power away from the GM so that he can't screw you like they got screwed in some game in '85. Like it's totally like a trauma response that I've seen in people.
Yeah.
The way they talk about it, you can kind of pick up on that if you're looking for it.
I've noticed this too, and this is probably something we can all talk about. Do you find that a lot of the more modern game design has kind of been made in such a way as to take a lot of the blame off the GM for when bad things happen to characters?
Yeah, because I think people take it personally when they shouldn't take it personally.
Yeah. What about you guys?
Oops, he says, dropping everything. So I think I said that about Candela Obscura, but kind of in reverse, because the only way that players and characters are really going to have anything truly bad happen to them is if you deliberately pick on them. So normally in a game system, the games master has like the shield of the rules or whatever. And in games like that and other Apocalypse World derived games, to a lesser extent, you don't have the cover of the rules or happenstance or randomness to kind of mediate between you and the players. You have to decide to be a dick to kill one of their characters or whatever. I think most games, apart from D&D, they're all a conversation. They're all in response to someone or something. But turning all the players into GMs just means you end up with more bad GMs, not less. It doesn't fix the problem.
What about you, Greg? Iries.
Wrong, Greg. No. I don't know. I think that systems are in place less to make the GM feel constrained or controlled or guilty about their actions, and more to let the players feel better about what happens to them. It's not like they're trying to take control away from the GM. They're just trying to make themselves feel better about what happens to their character, or dying or taking damage. Obviously my first thought goes to 5th edition. But yeah, that's what I think.
Well, 5th edition has the triple death save mechanic, so
I think the era of adversarial GM design is probably on its way out, at least right now. Not for myself, but for a lot of the game designers out there.
Speaking as a former killer GM, and I was a killer GM way back when I first started, and unfortunately that was because I got the wrong thing. Because like the first module I ever picked up was the Tomb of Horrors. And after reading through the module, I thought, oh, well, this is the way that the game is meant to be played. You're supposed to deliberately set up all kinds of death traps and stuff to deliberately try to kill your players, and their whole job is try to avoid that. I mean, I was right, but at the same time, the way in which you go about it is the key. Because I would set up some deliberately unfair situations. And years later, I found out that, doing it differently is better and leads to a better experience for everybody involved. But, I played under other DMs who were apparently of that same mold, because it became a case of we were playing Mech Warrior of all things. And at one point we were trying to get into a sealed hangar, and one of the guys had a mech, and he was, said, well, I got a mech. Why don't I just kick the door open? Because, it's just a roll door. And we all thought about that for, and we were, some of us were saying yes, but I think eventually what ended up happening is somebody in the party managed to crack the door code and get it open. And the GM told us, like, when the door opens, you see that there was an LRM 20 on the other side that was rigged to go off if somebody had kicked the door. And I was just kind of like, wow, that's such a deliberately crap choice. I mean, that somebody thought that kicking a door in and setting up an LRM 20 trap to go off, like a whole bunch of LRM 20s fire off in your face, basically, if you kick the door open. Wow, that's like such a deliberately screw you thing.
Setting that up as a trap.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not like somebody, if you're hiding an M1 Abrams inside of a a bunker or whatever like that, it's not designed to where, like, if you force the door, the tank main gun goes off or anything. I mean, I guess you could, but I don't know. Yeah, Science Mile. Yeah, I can understand it if it's a funnel, because the funnel games are designed to weed out characters and deliberately kill off the dumb ones and all that sort of stuff. That's a deliberate play style. But I don't know. I don't want players to get comfortable with that expectation. Like, oh, there's danger around every corner. That's one of the reasons why I object to certain modules. And I've told James Radji to his face about this one. But his Tower of the Stargazer module, it makes sense from the way it's designed that, the guy inside the tower doesn't want you to get inside of his tower and mess with all of his crap. So he's pretty much got like a trap everywhere. Everything is a trap. Don't touch anything becomes the name of the game when you walk into Tower of the Stargazer, including don't touch the door, because the door is trapped that you walk into in the very first, opening area. But
I think that would only make sense in a world of just overwhelming danger, like in Walking Dead, where there could be danger on every momentary turn of the way. Yeah, then you would trap everything like that. But if you wanted to interact with other people in any way, it wouldn't make sense to have things trapped to the point that your neighbor walks by and blows himself up.
Yeah. And the other part of that too is it's designed for low-level players, like first to third. So I'm kind of like, okay, well, here's a bunch of first-level players, never played Lamentations of the Flame Princess, and the first thing you run for them is Tower of the Stargazer. And the very first thing that happens is they walk up and try to open the door by the door handle, and the thing traps and kills them instantly. And I'm just kind of like, what kind of a precedent does that set for your first-level, never-before-played players?
And what zero-level people, first-level people, would go in after that happened?
Exactly.
I wouldn't.
Yeah.
Isn't this just From Software for tabletop, though?
I mean, I guess you could call it that. I mean, a lot of people talk about how nasty all the From Software stuff is, especially like Dark Souls. But the mechanic on that is different. I mean, yeah, it's tough, but it's fair for the most part. I mean, there's a few parts in there that are just totally stupid, unfair crap. But you learn how to deal with it because you have a mechanic in place where, like, oh no, I died. Well, I have to respawn at the bonfire and try again. And sometimes that gets frustrating, but you don't have that to fall back on in a role-playing game.
So it's even more hardcore, and therefore you have even bigger bragging rights, right? That's how that works.
Is it? Is it though?
But at some point, it would encourage player behavior that's so overly cautious that it just drags down time. I mean, just every door you're going to open with a pole, everything you're going to do, you're going to be doing it super cautiously. I feel like it's just at some point it is a game. You have to realize you can't make the incentive structure so that every second you're wasting time being super cautious. I had a group of players spend over 20 minutes, maybe 30 minutes, debating how to pick up a gemstone that was in a pool of water. They thought that it was trapped, or that it was acid, or that it was magic or something, and they spent so much. It was just a 20 gold piece gemstone that was at the bottom of a pool of water. Like, they just wasted 30 minutes on that.
Yeah. And sometimes I have to step out of character almost as a GM, and I have to tell the players, I'm like, look, guys, I'm not here to kill your characters, okay? I mean, yes, there is an element of risk, otherwise it wouldn't be a game, but I prefer not to sit here and just, keep hitting you with gotcha after gotcha after gotcha. Because then that's no fun for either one of us.
I feel that way about camping in the wilderness. Also, I feel like GMs have terrorized people so much overnight, forcing them to set up all these watches and advanced tactics to try to protect them. It ends up, like, to me, just dragging. Like, I want them to just get to the next day. I don't want to spend an hour debating how they're going to camp at night. And I personally, when I'm running a game personally, I mostly hand wave the nighttime stuff, because people are so paranoid about getting attacked at night that it just drives up cautious behavior.
Yeah. I really think like the first couple of sessions is really important for stuff like that. It's like how you set those things up and how they run is kind of going to determine how the other ones go. Like if you start doing gotchas the very first session, that sets the tone for the rest of the game, for the rest of the campaign, because it's going to be, people are going to be constantly on their toes and worried about this and that and the other, and when you didn't mean them to. I don't know. What do you guys think?
Back when I was playing in what you would call high school, we didn't have much time to play because it was during the lunch times. So yeah, we didn't have time to waste on going over every single door and chest. So we wrote out a standard procedure and just said we're doing that every time. So it just saved time.
Yeah, see, even that almost works, because then it's kind of like then the GM just ticks off the time and tells you what to roll.
Yeah.
Which is unfortunately, I don't know. I mean, follow me on this one, if you will. And I'm not criticizing AD&D for this. Obviously, the oldest forms of D&D are the ones that we look at for how a lot of our stuff was formed later on. But like, the oldest D&D systems didn't necessarily have like really granular skill systems, like, checking for traps and picking pockets and stuff like that. I mean, yeah, certain classes did, but since it didn't have those things, it kind of forced you to overly describe how you were going to do stuff in order to get to it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Whereas
a lot of the debate about searching mechanics falls into what you're talking about right there.
Yeah.
Like, how detailed should you have to describe what you're doing in order to find the thing that's hidden on the top of the ledge that you can't really see? Like, is that you're going to have to say, I jump up here and I look around this and I do that? Like, is that how specific you need to be? Or do you need to say, I'm taking 10 minutes, I'm going to search everything over here and roll a die?
Or not just the searching mechanics, but I mean, it's like, the perception checks, or the big one, the charisma checks, like how does somebody with an 18 charisma address somebody when the player only has like a 4?
But then that's the joy of playing someone who isn't like you. It's just you can't necessarily role play it. So long as someone makes some kind of effort, I'll generally let them roll. So, I seduced the princess by telling her how nice her hair looks. At least an effort was made, at least. So, all right, I'll let you roll.
Yeah. It's always
into that meme where it has the attractive guy who says the same thing to the woman in the office as the unattractive guy, and the attractive guy gets a good response, and the unattractive guy gets human resources call. Like
Mhm.
that's the kind of, that's what the role is determining.
But
Right there.
see, and that's one of those stats that I hate, along with dexterity. Dexterity and charisma are the two stats that I hate the worst because I think they're misused or they're overly powerful. Dexterity is way, way, way too powerful for everything that it gives you because it helps your armor class. It can help your ranged attacks. In some cases, it can help your melee attacks, depending on what your feats look like. And it also helps you determine your saves. And in some games, it can even go further to describing stuff that you do. Whereas, so having an 18 dex is immeasurably better than having like an 18 strength or an 18 con for that reason.
Yeah. But I think the Fallout special system does a great job in separating that into an agility and a perception. So
Yeah.
one of them is good at implementing kind of spatial awareness and distance, and the other one is purely physical agility.
Mm-hmm. See, yeah, I always thought they needed to break that down into two different stats, like dexterity and then reflexes. But the other one is charisma, and that's because charisma is kind of like hit points in that it's very nebulous on how it's described and how it's used and misused. Because a lot of people, they look at charisma and they think, oh, it's a measure of your attractiveness. But it isn't. Because, you can have some very ugly people who are very charismatic by their nature, by the way they deliver things, by the way they speak, or the timbre of their voice and everything else, who can be very, very charismatic. And, of course, people find different things about people charismatic that they don't about others. So I was really happy. I mean, a lot of people didn't like Unearthed Arcana when it came out for D&D, but I really liked it when they had comeliness as a stat, because then it defined what was good looking versus what was, well spoken or force of personality.
And it gave everyone a dump stat.
Well, yeah, kinda.
The bit that always bugs me is with charisma. So, like, monsters generally have very low charisma, right? But that somehow makes them mechanically less intimidating. That's never made sense to me. Like, if you've got a negative penalty on your charisma, clearly you should be better at being intimidating.
Yeah. Plus, not to mention, like if you have like a tribal chieftain, his charisma may not be very high, but apparently it's high enough that all these other, creatures are going to follow him. So what gives, and then people used to try to break it down. Well, yeah, but that charisma stat is only based on, humans and all this kind of stuff. In their eyes, he's probably, an 18 or something. I'm like, well, that doesn't make any sense. Does this mean that everybody's stats are all humanocentric?
She's a 5, but she's a Comic-Con 10.
Yeah. I mean, it's like she's a 4, but then she puts on makeup and becomes a 17. Which we've seen viral videos of that stuff on TikTok.
That would be pure, appearance. I mean, like, it's possible, I guess, but I don't think that Genghis Khan was a particularly beautiful, attractive man.
No.
He had incredible ability to motivate people and be charismatic. So I think that's the kind of thing, like, it's not tied to attractiveness.
Yeah. Same as the Australian or the Austrian gentleman with the very small mustache, who was not necessarily a good-looking guy, but was extremely charismatic.
Yeah, if you called it something like force of personality or whatever, something a bit more like what the cops call command presence,
magnetism,
something like that.
Yeah. But I mean, that's another one of those kind of misused stats. But anyway, getting back to your games and stuff. I know I like to talk just regular game design stuff with game makers because it's always kind of fun to pick everybody's brain. I have some of your stuff here I wanted to ask you about, so I'll just share the images so people know what they're looking for, and so I can ask you about them. So this is for Shadow Dark. What is this?
Last Candle was originally a kind of generic OSR module that I wrote, and I converted it to Shadow Dark because it's very easy. Shadow Dark is such an easy system to write for. It's incredible. So I converted it over. It's a town and a kind of range of outdoor locations around that town, and then one dungeon further out away from there where a bunch of things can happen. So it includes plot hooks for all kinds of stuff that's in the hinterlands, how to things that will help get you to the dungeon, and then it has a full, I think, over 120 room dungeon. It was the first thing I really tried to use some of Kelsey's design principles and how she writes the stuff. When you look at the blocks for each location and stuff, she describes the smells and the lighting and everything, like in headers above the section, where kind of like box text goes in a traditional design. So I think it's really interesting way of writing it. So I converted all that over. It's been a pretty successful product. I've gotten a lot of positive feedback. Now my only personal thing about it is I wish I had the executive function to go back and force myself to redo the actual map, which was a style that I used a long time ago. It doesn't reflect kind of my current graphical abilities. But other than that, I think it's a solid module for low-level parties, and leaves a lot of space for people to add whatever they want from other Shadow Dark stuff, because there's so much on the map from a hinterlands perspective that they can put all kinds of stuff out there for players to find.
Yeah, I was gonna say, man, that is super duper useful. That is great to start a campaign and to basically build a little campaign around. That's awesome. That is a great product.
Thank you. So I was just remember. So the premise of the Last Candle is that it's the town is a monastery that's like the last monastery of that order. So they think of themselves as kind of like holding up keeping the faith in a lot of ways. So there's a lot of kind of religious overtone to their way that they handle things. There's an abbot who's very conservative about how they're gonna treat people, and all kinds of stuff like that. So you're dealing with a place that's really fragile, and one of the main quest lines is that they want something that's in this dungeon in order to preserve it, kind of in the way that say Irish monks or Byzantine monks in history preserved texts that would have otherwise been lost.
Okay. I'm dating myself here, but everybody knows I'm old, so that's not a big deal. But what I like about this, and what's cool, what I instantly thought of whenever you were describing it, is Diablo. The very first Diablo, which is still the best one in my opinion. And I don't care what anybody says.
I have amazing memories of that. Yeah,
I do too. Nothing quite beats your first Diablo game, like the very first one.
Your first encounter with the butcher. Oh my
yes. God. You never forget that.
That was memorable. Yeah.
Oh yeah. That's still, after all these years, that is always the one monster everybody talks about in Diablo. But what was so great about that game, and how it relates to your book, is that is, like, it's a town. It's kind of contained unto itself. There's not that many characters in it, and there's not all that much to do, but it is a great central hub to start all your adventures from and to pick up new adventures. And then, of course, it has a dungeon attached to it, which I think is how a lot of old D&D and TTRPGs were kind of actually meant to be played.
Those are the and Borderlands kind of style.
Yeah, Keep on the Borderlands, Village of Hamlet. It always seemed like all the older stuff was, we have a town situated near a dungeon. You stay in town during the days to heal up, rest, recuperate, pick up more gear and whatever, and then you go and adventure in the dungeon and then come back out and go rest in the village again, which is very old school, but Diablo kind of followed that pattern and it worked really well. And yeah, I'm a big proponent of that. I like that.
My only realism problem with things like this is you end up bringing in way more money than this village would be able to absorb.
Yeah.
In terms of stuff. You can't go into a village of 300 people and sell 40,000 gold pieces worth of equipment in order to then buy $800,000 car equivalent in some little tiny town. It doesn't make sense. You have to work on things like having a money changer character, which I do. People like that could move some amount of product, but even then, it's hard to be realistic without creating another. Like I know that in like Hamlet, there's another. Was it Verbank? It's like the city that's kind of outside of the range of the money. You like kind of go over there and sell all your stuff, and then come back to Hamlet. So
yeah,
kind of extrapolated.
Well, that's funny because I mean, Grim and I we were talking about treasure on Tuesday, and we were kind of coming up with a lot of the same issues. It's like, yeah, you may pull thousands of gold pieces out of a dungeon, but yeah, your local economy can't handle it. You'd Mansa Musa the whole economy.
Exactly.
You bought everything in the village, and so now everything has to go up in price, and so now a loaf of bread costs you 4 gold pieces. What?
That's fun in games until you're the GM that has to then reprice the whole list of everything, and deal with all that like that. So it's very difficult from a management perspective.
But I mean, if you're using your gold, as an experience point system like that too, it also encourages you to have to go take that money someplace bigger anyway, especially if you're using like a training system for the characters. Okay, in order to achieve, level 2, you have to go find a trainer to teach you. Well, typically you're not going to have a bunch of trainers in a village of 300 people. Yeah. At least not for every class. I mean, yeah, you might have a retired guard who's maybe 5th level or something, and he can train you up a couple of levels or something. But eventually you're going to have to find a bigger
Conquer
place.
King has the market rating class rating. So, like, if you're in a town of 600 people, you're going to not be able to buy a whole bunch of stuff. You're going to have to go somewhere else in order to do that.
And I mean, I know I'm segueing off topic. I do that a lot, but it's kind of funny because one thing attaches to the other. I think it's funny that we're rediscovering all these old ways of playing, but we're also kind of marrying them with a lot of new systems, and we're kind of getting back into the feel and making the worlds a little bit more realistic because you're having to think about an actual economy of a place, and and of course other people like myself are interested in what happens with the food, as far as what you're eating when you're in a dungeon. Can you eat a monster? What does a monster taste like, and everything. And that's one of the things I really loved about your Ambition and Avarice was your trophy system.
Yeah, I saw your comment on that. Yeah.
Oh, I love that so much, and I mean Harmony liked it too. The fact that you have a reason to hunt monsters, so there's an active reason for you to want to go hunt down monsters, but also you get a benefit out of the things that monsters have, like naturally, not like extraneous, like what's in their lair for treasure. But if you eat a cockatrice's tongue or something like that, it gives you anti-stoning properties or whatever. Or you could sell it for 1,000 gold pieces. Obviously, you can't sell that in a town, but
yeah.
But I love stuff like this. I like dungeon ecology. I like the fact that a lot of us are starting to look into dungeon ecology and how the ecology works. And then we're working with the economy because all that stuff kind of blends together to, form a more immersive gameplay ideal. You know?
Yep. I agree.
Might-
I
might
think
just-
there's a bit of a Chesterton's fence function here, and that for people that don't know, that there's a famous quote of J.K. Chesterton about if you come across a fence, before you tear down the fence, you should figure out why somebody built the fence in the first place.
Mhm.
There might have been a reason. So I feel like this is a parable for half of the problems that we have culturally. Somebody came around and just destroyed a whole bunch of fences, and now it's like, oh, there's all these problems that the old way would have prevented, but we got rid of that old way of doing it because
Mhm.
we know so much better. So like third edition came along, fourth edition came along. They wiped out a whole bunch of praxis
Yes.
from 2E and before, and then people go, oh well, maybe there was a reason why they did that. You can't go into the guy who's the merchant in the 200-person village and sell him magic items like you can in third, fourth, fifth edition D&D. It's stupid.
Exactly.
People start coming up with, we're building new fences essentially.
Yeah, and it's like we were talking about. I started to understand it more and more. McCree or McCrease, whenever he was talking to us, was telling us how some guy was complaining to him about how overpowered the gladiator class is. And McCrease asked him,
You're wrong. Yeah, he wasn't using the limitations.
Yeah, he wasn't using any of the limitations and stuff, and he's kind of like, well, don't complain to me that your game is broken when you're not using the rules as I wrote them. And now we're starting to figure out, it's like there's a reason why all those dungeons had tons and tons of gold piece values and all this other stuff in there. It's because, you needed that stuff. That's why you went in there, was to get all that. It wasn't just to get rich, because there's really nothing to spend it on in the modern D&D economy, unless you have ridiculous crap like, oh, here's a magic item shop. Why don't you go in there and buy a Vorpal sword? You got enough money.
It only makes sense in a huge, massive metropolis that would ever occur.
Exactly. Yeah. I think it's funny because it's like, as I keep seeing where all these problems are developed from, I start seeing why a lot of people burn out of the game so fast. I talked to Pundit years ago on my show, and I said, yeah, I heard that people are starting to drop out after 6th level. And he corrected me and said, no, they're dropping out after 6 sessions.
Yep.
I thought that was crazy.
They play in a way that is extraordinarily demanding.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, I bring up Adventure Conquer King. I play every Saturday. He has all these tables in there for encounters that make it so even if they do something completely unexpected, I don't have to have a whole bunch of stuff prepped for that. I can just roll some things off the table, and here's what happens, and it's not stressful for me. Whereas if I have to come up with hand-tailored encounters in every direction constantly, like, that's gonna burn me out.
Uh-huh. And Iries and Grim, you guys have been kind of quiet. Do you have any input on these?
Good job. Just listening.
Are we there?
I don't get burnt out by that style of play, but you guys know me. Prep addict. Yeah, but I can see how normal people going into the game store, picking up RPGs for the first time would probably get tired of that pretty quick. I'm just lucky to have a good play group that lets me continue onward that way.
Mm.
Yeah,
that's rare.
6 sessions doesn't seem long enough for me to really run into these problems. It sounds more like games masters getting burnt out or players getting frustrated that they're not getting the experience that they want out of it for whatever reason. I would think that would be more likely than sort of running into the problems of higher level play.
Well, I wouldn't even know. It's like I don't think we've never even reached high level play. Very few times have we ever actually gotten to like 11th level or beyond it. Most of the time when we do high level play, it's the GM says, okay, we'll make characters at 12th level or 20th level or 15th level or whatever. It's very, very rare that I've ever actually seen anybody who honestly took a first level character and XP'd it all the way to 20th. I don't know what you guys' experience is.
I haven't seen that, but that is one of the reasons why I made one of the last products I released was Muliati the Conqueror, and it's an Adventure Conquer King 2 module that's designed for people starting at 9th level. So if you want to play with all the domain rules and all the warfare and all the stuff that comes with that, then you can start out right at night. One of the characters is a 9th level fighter. There's 8 pre-gens. The others are 8th level and close to 9th level. And they are already very, very powerful characters with lots and lots of money and flexibility. The map lets you go anywhere you want and move around. You have notes. The book itself is a book of basically your campaign notes. Like we found giant honeybees over here. We found a dragon flying around over here. We found demons over here. Like, so that the players can make choices from like a starting point of already being that powerful without having to go out and explore every one of those hexes. And I wrote a multi-tiered Twitter post about how I think we can, with games like Adventure Conquer King, we can make modules where you can start out and give the module is designed to be given right to the player, because the player has all this high level power that they're going to want to use they're going to want to read the book rather than the GM having to read the whole book and then narrate it to the players. So the players read through everything and they go, oh, I see that this town has a good deal on ceramics. So let's load up the boat and with ceramics and sail over, across 8 hexes over to sell ceramics to that town. And then along the way, you have sea monster encounters, all kinds of voyage stuff that's in Adventure Conquer King, things like that. So I think we have a potential to go in that direction, but a lot of people don't. They're afraid to even start out at that level and do it. I've gotten a lot of people who say that they don't know if they're ready to take on that responsibility as a player.
Yeah. Well, the person I was having a discussion with, we had kind of a long discussion, and I was telling him one of the best campaigns I ever played started back in 1992 or 1993, and it was a world that was ongoing that the GM was running, and he'd been playing it for a number of years before I got there. And since we had like a different group of players every couple of nights, but we were playing pretty much every single day of the week. I mean, I worked at the store, store would close, we'd go grab food, then we'd go hang out in the back and play on the tables. And he would run. But he had one world that was, he knew every part of it, and he set up adventures in different parts of it, and every group that we had, which was usually like different people with different characters in every, session, what eventually started to happen is you would come across stuff that your other characters had done. And so the world became more and more consistent. Like if my characters, liberated a bunch of slaves and we built a city, then later on, another group of our characters, a few years later, came into that same area and found, hey, there's a city here that was originally founded by slaves. And, you realize, oh, my character did that.
That's like Brosar Bronstein stuff.
Yeah. I didn't realize that until... we'd been doing it all along way back then, and I remember it was like one of the most fun games that we ever played. And it wasn't using AD&D, it was using a custom homebrew system that this guy made, that my DM made, and he's he's a big calculus nerd, so he figured out all these stats and things, and it made it work. But I think what made it work more than anything else was the fact that it was a GM who knew his world, and he had a good time running it. I mean, it's it's kind of like I said, a good GM can make even a bad game fun. So, or I mean, a badly made game.
I had turned off my camera there to grab this. This is the map for that Moyati module. Let's see if I can. I can't get my camera to stop for a second.
Focus.
I'll just pull it up digitally and I'll screen share it.
Okay.
Camera doesn't want to focus.
Yeah, Lord Thoth, yeah, your original campaign world you've been running since 1979. And I've heard stories about people who've been running the same campaign for 25, 35 years and all this stuff. And I always wondered how they did it. And my brain never cottoned on to the fact that they weren't running the same set of characters the entire time. They were just running the same world. And I don't know how I never made that connection.
And so, like, the characters would start out in one of these coastal cities in the civilized province of the empire. And then these are the dungeons that they've discovered, these white triangles. And they've scouted out all these areas so they can go. The purple ones are beastmen towns, so orcs, goblins, hobgoblins, and so on, gnolls. And they've got a lot of notes on all these hexes so they can just decide where they want to go.
And that's just one little chunk of the world. That's not even the complete world.
That's right. That is one part of the Gavardia world map.
Dang.
About 1/12, I think. Yeah.
Jeez. Man, I've always wanted to run a grand campaign like that, but I never managed to do it myself. It just never worked out. Either, players had to move on, players died, or I moved on, or I had, work schedule changes and stuff like that, and it just never worked out. But
so
you're lucky.
I think it should be able to. This is a big file, but this is that full Gavardia map, and if you zoom in, this is that place where the module is set.
Jeez.
But there's this entire island where they only have one coastal province, and it's outside of the empire. And then there's provinces over here, but there's borderlands on all sides of the empire. This is a huge ungoverned area. So there's tons of place for the players to pick wherever they want to go. This is for the full setting that I did for Adventure Conquer King 2. It's called Warlords of Gavardia. So this is like the Italy of this empire, even though it's not a Roman-based empire like Macrease has done. So
see, this is kind of the same experience I had when I first bought Worlds Without Number from Crawford, because he gives you a map and places in it, and it's pretty well detailed. And I thought, wow, that's a heck of a world there. But then later on, he released, the Atlas of Ladder Earth, and you find out that little chunk of map that you got in the main book is a very, very small section of the world. And I was just overwhelmed when I saw how big the world actually was. I was just like, oh my God.
Most of the maps of like Forgotten Realms or something like it, if you do the actual math, it's like the size of France and Germany put together or something like that. Like it's not that big, because the real world is huge, man. People don't appreciate how big the real world is in 6 mile hexes or something. Yeah, I mean,
yeah. I mean, how many times have I had that discussion with Grimm? It's like, and I always use England as my template. I'm just kind of like, you realize how big England is. The fact that within 6 miles of any place in England, there's going to be like a bunch of hamlets and towns and villages. Because like I keep telling people, I'm like, most of these places were within walking distance of each other. So it's crazy when you think about some of these overland adventures and GM's saying, oh, it's going to take you 3 days to get there. Well, how the hell far is that?
Yeah, it would take me 3 days to reach the neighboring suburb in Atlanta on foot.
Yeah.
It's a long way. People don't realize how far apart things are if you're on foot. Cars really make it feel like the world's a lot smaller than it is.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I live in Texas, and I remember one time some guy from, I guess it was somewhere up north, called us at the store, and they wanted to sell us something. And they said, well, we got a guy who can run over there and demo it for you. Let me see. You guys are in this place? Oh, well, we got a store over in El Paso. Why don't I have a guy run it over to you from El Paso? And we told him, I was like, you realize that's 8 hours away, right? Oh, no, I didn't know. I'm like, yeah, where the hell are you living in? Massachusetts or some tiny ass little place? We're in Texas, sir.
No offense to Grimm, but a lot of Europeans talk about Americans like, oh, we don't have trains or we don't have this or that or whatever, not realizing the scale of the situation. It's so much space compared to what a European country has. I have to travel. I have to drive 4 hours to get to the next state. It's a long way.
Hey, China has high-speed rail. No excuses.
well, not only that, but I mean, a lot of TTRPG video games and stuff like that also have that fast travel system, and it's kind of like you lose perspective on how far stuff is.
Yeah. In Oblivion, Elder Scrolls 4, I think it is, you have this on the same map within 6 miles of itself, a tropical jungle and a frozen mountain area. It's incredibly close, because people don't think about that. You can't just go over the next hill and you're in a different biome. It's just it's compressed down to be in a video game.
Yeah. Well, I mean, even the old Daggerfall game, you had entire regions that you could travel between with fast travel. And it was kind of like you didn't realize just how big these areas were if you were to try to walk it the whole way.
So I've played Fallout 4 on survival mode several times now. And having to actually walk is a significant difference. It makes you really appreciate the actual nuances of the land and how things work together, rather than seeing a snapshot and then jumping to a different location. You have to really see how things are interconnected as you're walking it.
Yeah, I confess, usually when I'm doing my first playthrough of any open world game, I never fast travel. I always slog it.
These worlds are beautiful. They spent tons of time and money making them beautiful, and people just jump across.
Yeah.
Well, that's why I always used to joke about how ridiculous the World of Warcraft maps were, because you had such weird biomes crushed together. It's kind of like, how do those work together?
There's a desert and an adjacent swamp.
Yeah. Yeah, volcanoes next to a swamp. I'm like, okay. I guess that could happen, but why is it active, Badlands next to a swamp?
The Witcher's world felt kind of cohesive, but I think that's because the biome was pretty much the same, unless you traveled abroad.
Well, I mean, isn't the Witcher's map pretty much like Poland?
Pretty much. But it felt somewhat realistic. It felt grounded.
Yeah,
I've been working on a map for my next Shadow Dark project, and I spend a lot of time ahead of day thinking, okay, if there's a desert here and there's these mountains, then on the other side it needs to be whatever all the water is being dumped out before it goes over the mountains and into the desert. Different things like that people make maps and not even think about. But you have to take those things into consideration.
Definitely. I want to ask you about this. Yeah,
This is
tell me about
a
this.
compilation of two PDFs that I released right when Shadow Dark was still in Kickstarter phase. So I released a book that had 24 new well, not all new because it incorporated like human is in there and stuff. Yeah, 24 ancestries and 36 classes as a way of pumping it up from the base level in Shadow Dark. And those sold really well. Both of them were Electrum, and I decided to put them into one compilation and make it along with I had an equipment book also. Equipment is kind of my thing. I don't know. We haven't talked about that yet, but all my friends talk about like that. That's what they think of me as a writer, because at Ambition and Avarice, the focus was massively on equipment. I think equipment is an essential part of role playing, because it gets people to feel the granularity of the world that they're in. If you have all these abilities like 4th edition D&D and that's all you're looking at, you interact with the world in that way. But if you have a pickaxe and a shovel and 3 rocks, then you're focused on what is actually in this space. I can put this crowbar underneath this thing and twist it and do that, like that kind of thing. So I feel like having a ton of equipment options and available for putting out there, whereas a lot of books will have like their equipment section is all weapons and armor. That's it. Now there's nothing else for people to even find. And then when they get treasure, they get like just things to sell. They don't get any actual things that you would find in a real world situation. You go into an abandoned mine and there's nothing, there's no tools, there's nothing that you could use for any, problem solving.
Excavation.
It's crazy. So in everything that I do, I've put tons of emphasis on having a lot of equipment that you can interact with the world, that the GM can put out there, just laying on the grid, walking into a room. Here's this stuff. People will pick it up and carry it with them if it's there, and they can use it. Yeah.
And looking over your equipment list, not only is it's not just a list of equipment, but you give good descriptions on everything too. And what I particularly like about the descriptions is it can give your players, it can get them to think outside the box on different ways to use that equipment, which is something I like, I mean, something as simple as a sledgehammer, it's like, this is really good for breaking bricks, but it can also be used for
all kinds of stuff. People, think about like if you were locked out of your house, like what tools would you want in order to get into your house? Like you'd be like, oh man, if I had a crowbar, I could open this window. If I had this, I could smash it. And say like tools help you interact with the world. That's why we make them. We live in a very sanitized world where people don't have to deal with hard physical problems that much anymore. But it's all fun and games until you need this tool and you don't have it.
Yeah. One of my favorite shows is Forged in Fire, and one thing I see, I love that show too. And one of the things I love to see, and the judges apparently like to see it too, a lot of these smiths will build tools right there on the show that they need in order to build some of these blades. Like, how many times have I seen them make jigs to set alignments and stuff on some of their metal, or particular pieces to line things up or bend things the right way? I mean, people take for granted that there was a time when somebody had to make the tools to make the tools. So that's where some of these weird tools that you don't know what their function is, where they came from.
People don't think about like that something was extruded and then locked in place and pulled around a cylinder or something in order to make it round. Like, and you can do that to break things. Like you can interact with the world in that way. Like a lot of times people will stock a dungeon, like I said, and the only thing that's in there is stuff that's treasure. But like people in real life have tons of stuff. You know, even like a nomadic person who's traveling with a yurt or a teepee or whatever, they're going to have tons of tools that they're going to be carrying with them for all kinds of stuff.
Then, yeah, people just take it for granted, you know. I'm okay with, you know, Castles and Crusades or Ambition and Avarice too, you know, having preloaded backpacks for, you know, adventurers and stuff like that for particular classes and all that. But, you know, a lot of the times, you know, the people have these preloaded backpacks and they don't even know what the stuff in there does. Like, why do I have this particular thing in there? What's this for? I've seen it happen more than once.
It's for whatever you can use it for.
Because people like it as a simplified, like they don't have to search for it. I've seen Alexander McCrease make the same argument for templates in Adventure Conquer King 2, because people don't want to have to think out all the proficiencies they're going to take. Yeah, it's the same thing. I think it's just, it helps people when they're trying to do a quick character generation.
Yeah. What were you saying, Grim?
Just the stuff in your backpack, you can use it for whatever you can use it for. There's just use your creativity. I always liked the West End D6 Star Wars for its templates, because you could get set up and play in like 5 seconds.
I love that game.
Yeah, me too. It's definitely the best iteration of Star Wars ever made. I will die on that hill.
So this Terra Invictus that you got up there, that is a campaign setting for Ambition Avarice 2, and it has a big map, like about the same size, well, probably a little bigger than Moliati, the Conqueror that I showed earlier.
Bigger?
Bigger than the module map, not the full Gavardian map. But it's a big map, and it has I think over 250, 300 keyed hexes.
Jeez.
Yeah, tons of locations to go in. Each hex has a D6 table for what's going on when you go in there. So like you might roll that there's a red dragon flying overhead because you're within 3 hexes of that red dragon's lair. So you can see that he's there in this area, but he doesn't even interact with you. All kinds of different things that you can run into while you're traveling around. And I have created a lot of the space so that people can, this was the beginning of me trying to design a lot of things with nautical access, because a lot of times people have this map for hex crawling where you have to travel by land over 100 miles to get to some particular thing. And in reality, in real life, people use water to travel massive distances in this time frame. So the map has naval access to a lot of territory, so you can make kind of a trip out there by boat, go in an adventure, and then sail back without having to cross the entire land. So it makes it so the player has more flexibility in how they want to deal with it. There's a ton of rumors up in one of the play tests that I ran. They got a rumor that there was a pyramid in a particular hex that was pretty far away, and they sailed there, and then they missed the rendezvous with the guy to pick them up. So they had to hike out along the coast back to where they came from. So that's kind of a way of dropping a bunch of rumors and hints for them to find things, and then they get to pick where they want to go deep out into that territory. So that's hence the name unconquerable territory in Latin. Like it's just a huge area that nobody has been able to subjugate, and there's kingdoms around the edges, and the players are adventuring out of those locations.
I like that. It's funny you mentioned sea travel, because that's another place where I think a lot of GMs are really out of their element, so to speak, because it's like most of us have never really been on the sea for an extended period of time. And certainly when we have been, most of us haven't been in the position of being a mariner on board a vessel that was, from ancient times and having to deal with all the issues you had to mess with back then. And I never even got an appreciation for something like that until I saw the movie Master and Commander.
Oh, yeah, that was an awesome movie.
It's an awesome film. And I got the long one where, you're seeing all the different things happening on board that vessel, and how dangerous that stuff really was.
And that would be 400 years after this kind of time frame. Yeah. So this is the map of that area. My friend who's in my Saturday night game group wrote a module that's on my drive-through account called Maelstrom Island. That's an island to the south of this area. So like if you're traveling along the coast and you encounter a hurricane or something, you can get thrown off course to this island. And so you can see around the orange text is kind of like a Portugal, Spain type culture. The blue is a French type culture kingdom, and the green is like a Hungarian, Polish, Western Slav type culture. And so this whole peninsula here and this island are just uncontrolled by these groups. It's got tons of monsters there. There's dark elf cities that are underneath some of these mountains. There's dwarven stuff that's out there in that wilderness that you can find and use as base of operations or markets and stuff like that to sell stuff. But you have to find it first. Like somewhere in this southern coast under the Fane Mounts, there's a halfling village where they publish the underground newspaper, The Half Truth, and distribute it through the region. So things like that. Yeah, if you can find those places, you can buy and sell and interact with those people.
You're going to make Grim want to go conquer the French.
I use a lot more French than a lot of people. Tim Shorts, a friend of mine, he always ribs me because I use names that I try not to just stick with idyllic British countryside names, and so I have French words, and there's Hungarian words on there. Yeah, there's Maelstrom Island.
Mm-hmm.
It is a great module. You could play it with or without my campaign setting. It's totally its own thing. Don't want to spoil it too much of what's on this island, but there's a bunch of people who've also been trapped on this island and can't get off. So including some pirates for Brent. So there's all kinds of cool stuff. I've played as a player on this island for 20 sessions or so. Like it's a great place.
I love it. And yeah, I mean, like I said, certainly, when I first, wanted you on the show, all I had heard of was Ambition and Avarice 2. And I assumed there was a part 1, which I have never seen. But I really didn't know that you had this extensive of a portfolio until I got to look at your pack. And I was just kind of like, oh my gosh. There's so much stuff that this guy's written. It's amazing. And it's for so many different systems, and I love it. I mean,
I've just described it as I just have a bunch of stuff that's in my head that creatively I just come up with all the time. And for a long time, I used my energy to mod video games with that. But
oh, cool.
I'm sorry, what?
I said that's cool.
Yeah, I love video games. The problem is video games move on. Time moves on. You spend 80 hours building a mod, and then people stop playing that game. So I wanted more control over what I created. So that I started just turning all that energy onto role-playing game stuff.
I think that's awesome. But I will say this, okay? I mean, yeah, people do move on from video games. But a lot of times, most of us, the really good video games, we go back to those. and we look for fresh mods to make them more interesting again. Like, I'm one of those guys who, I don't know, I've got like 900 hours or something like that in Fallout New Vegas. And even though I'm not currently playing it, we know the game is, many years old by this point. But I will still get up on Nexus every couple of years and see what kind of new mods have been developed for it and new story modes. I'll download those and I'll start playing Vegas again. Just because it was that good of a game, And I know plenty of people who still go back and play Morrowind all the time and still say, it's the best Elder Scrolls game ever. And I'm like, nah, you're full of shit. It's Skyrim. But
yeah, I agree. Although, hey, maybe I will make a Morrowind version of Shadowrim sometime in the future. I also love Morrowind. It was the first game I ever experienced like that. Just totally open world, amazing content. The visuals, totally different from any other medieval fantasy stuff. And so this is Shadowrim cover you got up. That I made this as a way of playing the Skyrim setting with Shadow Dark, and just came out. It's been out for less than a month now, and it's already copper and headed towards silver. So I'm very excited about that.
I love it.
I love it. I love Shadowrim. I love Skyrim. I meant to say, Skyrim is amazing.
Yeah, it really is. It's one of those games that I can.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead, Greg.
I have many more hours in Morrowind. I think it's a better game.
Well, okay. I mean, I played Morrowind a lot before Skyrim came out, but I always revisit Skyrim just because it's so much fun. And I don't even mod it. I mean, I still like it vanilla. I'm one of those weirdos. I just do. I just think it was just well made from the beginning.
Yeah, I don't use very many Skyrim mods except graphics.
Yeah, same. Oh my God, really? Whoa.
Yeah, so this is the map for Shadowrim. And,
holy crap.
If you zoom in, all the little black tags are keyed hexes. So there's tons of space for game masters to put any particular thing that they want in there. I've done kind of short Shadow Dark descriptions of stuff in the town. So there is a framework there, but like there's this blacksmith and this alchemist and this and that, but there's still tons of room for the GM to fill it however they want.
Man, all this Shadow Dark stuff really makes me want to play it now. I want to grab your stuff and read it and play Shadow Dark because I like Shadow Dark anyway. I have to admit, I mean, I'm being upfront about this and 100% honest. I was one of those people who, initially thought, oh, Shadow Dark, it's this upstart Kickstarter campaign that's trying to bridge the gap between 5e and OSR. Yeah, what a bunch of crap. And she made $1 million. Yeah, we know why. But then, as it turns out, the writer Kelsey was real nice to one of my friends, Victor Gorchev, Stay Buff Marshmallow Man, and he gave a really good opinion of her, and I'm like, really? You like her? So I investigated her stuff, and I bought a copy of the Shadow Dark game, and I have the book, and I'm just like, wow, this is actually really nicely written. It's very playable. It's very quick to get into, and I actually like it a lot. It doesn't.
I think it's a great game. I started playing it with my friend Eric Tinkar runs a podcast as well, and he wanted to do a live play of it as a thing. And that was the first time I read the quick start, and I was like, wow, this is really well done. Mm-hmm. I do layout and graphic design stuff for part of my job, and the craftsmanship of just the layout in the book is amazing.
Yeah, it is.
I was like, man,
this is very readable.
This is stunningly good. And I was really impressed all the way up in when I got the Kickstarter materials in physical form. The Cursed Scrolls were amazing. I mean, like just mind-blowingly good product. Only like 50-page little booklets, and it had really compelling material and stuff. And I was like, man, I was already talking to Kelsey on Discord back, between because I'd released a bunch of stuff for her for Shadow Dark, and I said, man, I'm gonna have to up my game. This is incredible. Like, I can't believe how good this is. She deserves all of the praise and recognition that she gets. She innovates enormously.
Yeah, I have to admit, I definitely am eating crow and humble pie because of my earlier attitudes, and I freely admit it. Like I said, she made a believer out of me after reading her material. So.
And she's also a great example of marketing skills. Her wife, I think, is the main marketing person. She does it for her job as well, I think, and she ran an incredible ground game. I mean, just like a politician level ground game. Just got the message out, got people talking, did stuff to the point that a lot of other creators were resentful and jealous of how effective it was. And that's just bitterness. She did amazing. I would aspire as a creator to be as good at marketing as she is. I mean, she is so good at communicating her message.
It's funny you talk about that, other creators being, bitter and nasty about it. I've noticed that on a lot of the indie scene, because like everybody who makes indie games, Grim included, I guess myself included, Greg included, you included, because we're all game makers. We're all just kind of trying to make our products and make a few bucks. And certainly when somebody comes along who can make $1 million, we tend to not celebrate their success. We tend to get jealous and nasty and all that sort of stuff. And I guess it's because we didn't get that kind of success. But the thing...
Oh, go ahead.
No.
It's not enough that I succeed. Others must fail.
Yeah.
I don't want to open up this whole discussion, but Grim is very familiar with all the controversy that went down at the beginning of the year. That was all the private messages that were released about those people from the Google Plus days. That I think the redeeming message out of that, I forget whether it was in that woman's article or what, was that these people feel like there's only a limited amount of attention. And the only way to get it's a zero-sum game. The only way to get it is to destroy other people, to take their attention for yourself. And that is the exact wrong way of approaching marketing or conversation, social media, anything like that. You're never going to be as successful as you could be if you were positive and positive sum, open orientation to finding new people to talk to.
Yeah. I realize that these days, and I guess to some degree I always did, because it's like, even on YouTube, whenever I started my YouTube channel, it was, I had already seen all the other channels out there, and I still subscribe and watch some of these other guys, but most of those guys got where they are by rage clicking and, constantly complaining about stuff and all this. And I realize that they're just as passionate about their stuff as I am about mine. But I wanted to make the conscientious choice to not just rage click on everything. I mean, I wanted my channel to be kind of positive, to uplift things.
It's difficult sometimes.
It's very difficult a lot of the times, because we see so many things that we're passionate about being torn down and destroyed. And yeah, we rag on WotC all the time, not because we hate the Dungeons and Dragons game, but we just hate the direction it's gone in. And we'd like to see it get better. We'd like to see it, be successful again. And as WotC moves, a lot of the rest of the industry around it moves. But my commitment is also to lifting up all the other people who aren't WotC, especially not WotC, because WotC got enough marketing people for them anyway. But, Chubby Funster doesn't have a lot of people out there talking to him and showing off his products. And, Alexander McCree can use a few more people looking at his stuff. And, all these other people.
Totally agree with that.
And that's just all I try to do on my channel, is to try to be a little bit positive and show people, hey, you have alternatives. If you really don't like WotC, like me, then don't give them your money. Give your money to these other creators. And it's like YouTube. It's like I tell people about YouTube. It's like, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of us. We all say a lot of the same thing. We all look at stuff a lot of the same ways. But there's enough marketing space on YouTube. There's enough room on YouTube that everybody can get an audience and find an audience for their stuff. And it's the same thing with RPGs. I've got a shelf full of different games from different designers and everything else. And I don't necessarily hate one over the other or anything else. I mean, I like all of them. Otherwise, I wouldn't have bought them. I don't talk about games on my channel that I don't like, except of course Dungeons and Dragons, but the WotC version.
But that's because the anger that we have at WotC doesn't really help us. Even if we make some advertising clicks by raging about it. That's why I wrote Shadow Sun. That was a big turning point for me. I said, look, they're never going to do what I want them to do, so I'm not going to pay attention to them anymore. I'm going to turn things around so that I can be in control of it myself. So I said they're not going to remake Dark Sun. They're not going to bring it back. Dark Sun is dead from WotC's perspective. It contains too many bad, wrong ideas, and they don't want it. So I said, okay, so I'm going to make a Shadow Dark conversion of it so that you can play it. And I've seen people posting in the Shadow Dark Facebook group using maps, using actual stuff from Dark Sun, but playing it with Shadow Dark through Shadow Sun. So they can
post it for you.
They can still play. So people can still be enjoying what they did. We just don't have, like, focusing on WotC not bringing it back doesn't help anybody. The thing that will help people is creating a way for them to actually play it. And Shadow Sun has been my most successful product ever. It's been people have really taken to it because people want to play Darks. They want new ideas for Dark Sun. They want to connect with people about it. And Wizards of the Coast is just intentionally slamming the door in their face. It's just stupid.
They don't like money.
I don't know why they would do it. Yeah, it's ridiculous. So, I converted it up. It's not like just like Shadowrim. It's not a perfect conversion. It doesn't violate their copyrights. It innovates. It has a lot of different stuff, and allows people to keep moving forward. That's what I want to do. Keep moving forward. Don't get stuck in, we're screwed over by these people, blah blah blah. That doesn't help you. It doesn't.
Yeah.
Wallowing in that problem doesn't help. But if you can channel that energy, take all the energy you were going to go complain about Wizards of the Coast and write a new version. Now my next project is an Al-Qadim type setting for Shadowrun, and they're never going to bring back Al-Qadim either.
No.
It's just the same principle. They don't want it. So the great thing about the Shadow Dark licensing stuff is that I can publish that. You can publish a Shadow Sun module tomorrow, and I would support it. It doesn't have it. We're not attached to the Open Gaming license anymore. It doesn't matter what the Wizards of the Coast thinks.
Yeah, and I'll still rag on Wizards of the Coast in an effort to kind of browbeat them into changing their ways and drawing attention to how bad they are. But the one thing I don't want to do, even if I am a game creator, which I am, is I'm not going to try and drag down other people's products, especially not by trying to compare them to mine. I don't want to tell people it's like, oh yeah, Machinations of the Space Princess. I worked on some of that stuff, and it's so much better than X game and all that made by some other company. Because what does that really get me?
But it is though.
But I mean, it's I can't see how that can get you ahead on anything, and I've seen creators who do constantly shill their products, especially on other people's shows. When other people are talking about their products, and I always find that really distasteful.
That may have happened this week, even.
That may have happened this week, even. But yeah.
I missed that somehow.
Yeah.
You can tell me later.
Yeah. We already did actually, but
I missed it.
Yeah. But that's the thing. It's like, it's kind of like what is it? Tywin Lannister was telling, Joffrey, and I know everybody's like hates Game of Thrones, but that particular thing made sense to me. It's like, Tywin tells Joffrey, he says, a king is not a king if he has to keep telling everybody that he's king or reminding everybody that he's king.
That's right.
And it's the same thing with gaming and all that. You don't have to tell me you're a great game designer by reminding everybody that you're a great game designer. Just be a great game designer. Let people find out. Let people spread the word organically. Kevin Crawford doesn't really engage in social media or anything like that. But, I've sold plenty of Kevin Crawford's books just because I shill his name all the time. And I play his products on the air and I talk about his stuff all the time because I'm really enthusiastic about it. I really like it. I enjoy it. And I want to, let other people find out for themselves how cool it is. Just like I want people to find out how cool Ambition and Avarice 2 is and how much I loved it and what neat things it brought to my table. And now I'm going to check out your other stuff and see how cool that is and what it can bring to my table, because now I know you got more. So I just have to get some money together, guys. I'm so broke.
Well, I remember when you were doing the talk, wasn't the unboxing, but it was a video where I remember Grim was on you're talking about Ambition and Avarice. I think Harmony was there.
Yeah.
Remember? And Grim was like, well, what's the pitch? So I do want to, I said, this is the pitch of Ambition and Avarice, is that in most games, and one of the things you hear people talk about with the thief class in old school stuff is people are like, the thief doesn't fit. Like everybody else is this noble hero, and the thief is out of place. Like why is this paladin and holy cleric and why are they traveling with the thief, right? And Ambition and Avarice 1 and 2 is the reversal of that, and saying the person who's this holier than thou guy, that's the unusual person. The people in the party are the weirdo people that don't fit with society, the brigand, the knave, the enchanter, the people who are doing things that people are like, what are you doing? Why are you going into that place? Those are the kind of characters that get developed. So all the classes and the races and everything are oriented around the kind of people who would go out into a world where there's all this danger and deal with this stuff. They're not superhero people.
That's kind of like for Coin and Blood. It's kind of like the similar thing. It's all about what they term as playing the bad guys, but it's actually like all, nasty, nefarious types. Although Ambition and Avarice does a better job on that. But this is kind of like the conversation I was having with that person before the stream started. We were talking about the differences in authors and stuff that we had growing up. And it's like, like most people, I started off with Tolkien because The Hobbit, I saw at a very young age and started getting interested in all of Tolkien stuff. Well, I like Tolkien stuff, but his writing is very difficult for a very young person to read. And the other part of it is kind of like his characters are very nobly minded. They're almost like on a pedestal apart from normal people, in that they'll do things that, normal people wouldn't do. Whereas I find characters like Fafford and the Grey Mouser, Conan, the Stainless Steel Rat, all these other fantasy characters are kind of more down to earth. I mean, it's like they're just trying to earn a buck, and they're very down to earth because they'll spend all their money drinking and wenching and on stupid stuff, and then have to go out and go do it again. But it's kind of like the rest of us. What do? We go to a 9 to 5. We work our ass off. We get our paycheck. We pay all of our bills, and if we got anything left over, we go, buy a pizza or a beer or whatever, and try to enjoy our life until the money runs out, and then, hopefully we've worked enough to get another paycheck, and that's just how we survive.
And that's why I feel that Tolkien's characters are, to my personal taste, and superior in that way, because they transcend my day-to-day life. I appreciate Fafhrd and the Grey Mouser and Conan and, all of the gritty pulp fantasy characters who are just out to make a quick buck. They get drunk, they, womanize, they do all these things. But I like more aspirational ideals, and Tolkien fits that mold for me.
He does. And I'm not saying anything bad about Tolkien. It's just kind of a different strokes for different folks.
And you do have the hobbits who are kind of stand-ins for normal people.
Yeah.
Providing the normal person perspective. And Bilbo was a burglar, of course. So thieves do fit the party.
Thieves do fit. And he was a noble thief in that case.
He didn't want to be one.
Yeah, I was going to say, he didn't want to be there.
Well, Robin Hood is a noble thief. So there's an example.
Yeah.
Multi-classing is regular, obviously.
Yeah, and Brent, not everyone can save the world. Sometimes it's just about making your town or village safe, which that's a great idea all in of itself and perfectly understandable. It's like, I'm not a great hero because I killed this lion, because I went out to go kill this lion. I saw this lion. I had to kill it, otherwise it would have killed me. I didn't do it to go save the village. I was just saving my own life, and now I'm a hero. We do have a question for you, Chubby.
I saw it. I'm assuming he means like actual gameplay rather than community stuff. But in community stuff, it's really allowed me to talk to a lot more people than I was. People who are like, I was connected to a lot of old school people, and it brought in a lot of people that played 5e and did so. It's been interacting with a lot of different perspectives than have historically. But mechanically, Shadow Dark is pretty much aligned, except for the advantage disadvantage system, with old school design very, very closely. It's mechanically almost identical to some of the earlier D&D stuff, and so I've found it's very good packaging. It's orienting things where you're rolling for a higher value rather than rolling under and stuff like that, but mathematically it's almost the same, and it's been a really great system to write for because of that reason. It doesn't take you a long time to figure out how what feat needs to be attached to this mod so that it can work like you don't have to worry about all that mechanical stuff. You can focus on the actual content, writing the actual ideas, rather than wasting all your time hunting down some mechanical element in Pathfinder to hook into, or whatever system you're looking at. And it does allow me to get a lot more of the idea content out rather than spending the time on minutia. So I'm much happier writing for it. I can be more creative in world building, in kind of setting design. That's why I've done a lot of setting writing for Shadow Dark, because you don't have to build out all that. Like I'm working on an Adventure Conquer King 2 module version of Shadow Sun, and as much as I love Adventure Conquer King 2, the mechanical basis is massive. So you have to spend a ton of time working on what is the actual proficiency for this, and how is it working, and all this kind of stuff, and making sure it aligns with the mechanics of the world. And that is a lot more work. It's a lot easier as a writer to spend all your time writing the flexible soft stuff of, people and characters and landforms and nations and stuff like that, rather than spending all your time working on mechanics. So I hope that answers your question, Patty.
And we're getting close to the 2-hour mark. I've kept you here longer than I actually intended to. We usually only run an hour, but I was really enjoying having this discussion with you, so I hope I'm not stealing too much of your time.
My family probably wants me to go cook some paella soon, but that's what I'm that's next up after this. We're trying out a new paella recipe. So,
oh, cool. Well,
I'm the cook in our family.
I got you. Well, you said you wanted to do some giveaways.
Yeah, I got 2 people. We can just if I can get the end result from you, I just need their emails, and I can hook them up with whatever product from Chubby Funster that you want. If you win, just tell me what you want, and I'll hook it up to you, or give you, if you want some of the like under $5 ones, I'll give you a couple of them.
Okay. Yeah. Well, we got 13 people on the stream right now watching, so I'm gonna give you guys like a couple of minutes, like 2, and whoever types in the word Chubby in the chat will get an entry, and I've got the giveaway tool, which thank you very much, by the way, for showing me that.
No problem.
So I can actually start doing that.
It worked out really good on Eric's podcast. It's been great for getting engagement. People, want to get excitement, feel like at the end. It's a great way of closing out a podcast.
Yeah. So, yeah, and those of you guys who've been here like from the beginning to the end, you'll really appreciate this. So I'm going to leave it open for 1 more minute while we talk, and then we'll go ahead and start drawing. Just real quick, how are they going to get a hold of you? Through Twitter, or?
Yeah, you can PM me through Twitter if you want, or you can leave. Well, I wouldn't leave anything in the chat here, but I have a YouTube channel that I've commented a couple of times in this stream. If you want to send me a message through that, also. But yeah, like I said, all I need is the email address and what you want from whoever wins, from both 2 people.
Okay. Well, we got a little bit more time. Greg, Grim, you guys got any other questions for Chubby while we got him?
No, I'm good. I'm fading fast here.
Are you getting tired?
Yeah.
All right. Okay. Well, we're gonna close out right now. So we've had a minute. So here we go. We've got 6 entries, and our first winner is still going. Apparently, I entered by accident. So.
Oops.
Oh. So our first winner is Jacob Hoke.
All right. He's been commenting for a while, so.
There you go, Jacob. If you will get a hold of Chubby after the stream, or I guess during, whenever, you'll get some content from him. So we're going to draw again. Mercurius.
A true Roman.
Yeah, there you go. He's a kind of a long-standing member of the show. Always a good guy to have on. So I can't think of anybody better to win it. So, okay, there we go. There's our 2 winners.
So guys, let me know what you want. Take a look at my publisher page and whatever you want. Send me a message.
And just in case you guys missed his publisher page, real quick, I'll go ahead and post it back up. We're so organized on this show. I'm just doing everything by myself. I should probably, get a host to do that or something, but I'm a one-man band so far. So there you go. Here's where you can find all his stuff. If you didn't win, I'm sorry. I mean, it was luck of the draw. But definitely, I think you'll like his stuff. And he's got things for OSR. He's got stuff for Axe. He's got stuff for Shadow Dark. So it's kind of like pick your flavor. It's all good.
And I will pitch at the end here, like, even though Adventure, Ambition, and Avarice is its own system, like, I get comments from people all the time that they use the equipment list, or that they use the spell ideas, or they use all this other stuff. So even if you have a system that you love, like, I have players in my game ask me if we're playing Adventure Conquer King, they're like, can I have this item that's on the ANA2 list? I'm like, sure, that's 5 gold or whatever it is. So it is a useful resource. A lot of it, like the stuff that I started out releasing for Shadow Dark, was just supplemental material, equipment, class ideas, magic spells, so on. So
I definitely like what you did with the wish spell. That made my day when I read that. I'm like, yes, an XP cost to a wish. I love that. Let's see that sucker abuse that spell.
Yeah, I one of the things I tried to do, and Macrease does this as well, is create systems within the game that creates the outcomes you see in the game. So how do you get undead? How are they made? Holy water is a good example. Like, a lot of times they have a game where the holy water is made by clerics, but there's no explanation of how a cleric makes the holy water. So I created a spell called Necrostasis that when you take a dead body, depending on what you do to it, and then you cast this spell, you get a different type of undead. Right?
I remember that.
You have somebody that you put in, they slowly drown, and then you cast the spell on their dead body. You get a different undead than if you pack them in a barrel with salt and leave them in the cave for 18 months and wait for them to cure. Like that the different recipes for that, as recipes for how to create magic items. All the magic items in the game come from these recipes, right? So things like that are built in to how the game kind of setting the world building works. It's connected in. So those spells like Wish, if everybody could just cast Wish at a certain point, then that would really dramatically alter the reality of the game world. So the cost of casting Wish is really high.
Yeah,
and you can get a lot from it, but you
lose a lot.
It can be a Faustian bargain for you if you don't play it right. So
yeah, I think that when you start fundamentally altering the nature of reality, it's like, you deserve to have some big penalties. But
I think you make holy water by dipping a pope in hot water and then smooshing him against the side with a giant spoon.
Or just boiling him alive in it.
He's a tea bag, yeah.
Yeah, he's a big giant tea bag. And Greg has said that, if you did not win anything from Chubby today, then find and DM him on Twitter, and he will send you an Iris PDF of your choice. That is very cool. Thank you very much, Greg.
No problemo.
I think that's awesome. So everybody wins today. Awesome.
3 books for 5th edition. One is a setting guide. One is a short rat folk adventure. And the other is a sword and sorcery setting and adventure. And I have 1 book for Castles and Crusades, if you're interested in that.
And, speaking of that, I was going to tell you that one of the books I got in the other day is Astraeus. So I will have to unbox that again.
Another glorious unboxing.
Well, yeah. And this one is a hardback. I think the other one I got was a softback. I think. But I'll have to dig out my other copy.
I don't know.
But anyway, there you go, guys. So everybody who tuned in today is a winner, one way or the other. If you didn't win from Chubby Funster, you won from Iris. And either way, it's all good stuff. So there you go. Yeah, thank you for coming out here tonight. I do appreciate y'all, and I do appreciate your time, Chubby. I know we held you for a long time, and Grim is about to fall over, so we're going to go ahead and end the stream now, but y'all take care, have a great week in Geek, and tune in tomorrow when we run some more Zombicide Chronicles. Till then.
On behalf of the staff of the Independent California Motel, I wish you all sweet dreams.